Morning, everybody. We are delighted that you're here with us today. It's hard to believe this is Margin and Mission Ignition Labinar number 4, the culmination of our earned income sessions. And today is all about business planning. We're excited to dive in and share a bit with you about a business plan and all the components of it. This is the home stretch, and we're delighted to have you all back with us today. As always, we have a few goals for today's session, one of which, of course, importantly, is to continue to gain insight into earned income and business planning. We've been talking a lot with all of you about your organization's most viable earned income possibility. Each of you have one or two, maybe more. And today is really going to be focused on understanding the importance of a business plan for your earned income venture. So we want you to gain some knowledge. We want you to acquire some tools and resources. And we also hope that you'll be able to apply it to your own organization. And we'll give you a worksheet and some tools to do that. So as always, our agenda is action-packed today. We have you for an hour and a half. We're going to start with just a few housekeeping things, I should say. We'll do a short recap from Labinar number 3. And then we'll dive into business planning, the why, the what, and the how. Importantly, we will have a wrap up. Make sure that you stay all the way through to the end of the session, because we'll be sharing some important items with you and next steps. So as we've told you before, we love when you get connected on social media. So please feel free to do that. If anybody would like to tweet or post on social media today, please feel free to do so. No session would be complete without our Zoom housekeeping. So I'm going to introduce Michael Zimmerman, one of the fellows at the Patterson Foundation, to just quickly share Zoom housekeeping. Michael, are you there?
Yes, I am. Thank you, Michael Oxman. So a couple items to keep in mind as we proceed through our Labinar. Please, we ask that you remain muted as Michael and Larry continue the presentation. If you could kindly rename yourself with your first name and your organization in your Zoom so that we know who you are and from which organization you're coming. And then, of course, please feel free to share some comments and questions in our chat box, and we'll get to them as time permits during our Q&A. And that's it for our house rules. Mike, back to you.
Thanks, Michael. And of course, no Zoom session would be complete without us doing a Zoom group photo. So I'm going to let everybody show their pearly whites and ask Josephine if we can take a couple of quick Zoom photos. So Josephine, you there?
I'm here. Give me a second to get set up. I'll give you a prompt to smile and hold. And I'm going to take 2 pictures, as I always tell you, because the times I've taken one, it of course didn't work and folks weren't happy with me. So here we go. Smile and hold. Relax. Let me just set it up once more. And I'm going to fix my hair. No shame. All right, here we go. Smile and hold. Perfect. All done. It's nice to see everybody. Thanks for being here.
All right. Thank you, Josephine. So continuing with today's Labinar, just a reminder to everybody that these 4 90-minute Labinars and the 2 mini Zoom consulting sessions that we've had with you and your teams are a gift from the Patterson Foundation. And we're delighted that you've all taken advantage of them over the course of, I guess, the past 4 months. Plus, as is the case with many of TPF's initiatives, there is the opportunity for something more, which we've told you about before. So for those organizations that have fully participated in our Labinar series, we'll tell you today about a process to be considered for advancement to a more intensive consulting phase of this initiative, which will include 3 phases of work. So we would work with you to help develop a business plan for your earned income venture, to implement the business plan for your earned income venture, and then to stay with you for what we call post-implementation tracking and monitoring. So stay tuned, more to come on that towards the end of today's session. Josephine, can I ask you to introduce the first poll question?
Of course, here we go. Thinking about your organization's #1 earned income possibility, which one of the following will be most critical to its success? So I think all of you have done our poll questions, but you just click on the answer that is best matched with you. Strong mission alignment, having LWRCC, developing a business plan, raising needed startup growth capital, or committing to a dedicated effort over time. Which one of the following will be most critical to your #1 earned income's success? Give you a couple more seconds. It always looks like a race to me because I see blue lines going over, and which one's going to win? It's tied between developing, or close to tied, developing a business plan and committing to a dedicated effort over time. A few more seconds and I will share the results. There you go. Looks like 41% committing to a dedicated effort over time.
All right, well, very interesting results to this poll. Interesting that nobody said having LWRCC. So we'll talk more about that. The reality for this question is that it really is all of the above. But today, we're going to focus on one important component, and that is developing a business plan. So with that, let's continue. We have a quote that we like to share, put it before them briefly so they can read it, clearly so they will appreciate it, picturesquely so they'll remember it, and above all, accurately so they'll be guided by its light. So Joseph Pulitzer, a famous editor, once said this, and we believe that when it comes to business planning, this is absolutely true. Having a business plan for your earned income venture will help you do all of these things. Most importantly, to help you tell the story of your business venture, sort of the what, why, how, when, who, and how much. And that's important because it's ultimately going to help you prove the viability of your business venture. So Larry, I'm going to turn it over to you to do a quick flashback on Labinar 3.
Good morning, everybody. Let's look back just a couple of slides here. Hopefully you see your picture on there. It was up on social media just after the Labinar last time. And then we focused on a couple different things. One was assessing your earned income. We looked at funding your earned income. We always need some startup capital for that. How are you communicating now about going through this process? And if you start business planning, what does that communication look like? And are you ready? That whole LWRCC, which I'll dive into in just a minute. And you'll notice that we keep asking the same questions in different ways about your business opportunity because we want you to dive deep and think about it and choose the right one that best fits you and your mission. We talked about LWRCC, leadership, willingness, readiness, capacity, and culture. And we spent time on all of our one-on-one calls over the past month, really diving in and talking about these. And some of you are great. Some of you have some issues with one or two of these that you know about and we discussed, and hopefully you can work through. So that's pretty much the flashback. Let's do another Zoom poll. Josephine.
Yep, here we go. And thinking about your earned income progress since Lab 3, what has transpired in your organization? I love this one. We significantly advanced our thinking plus action. We made some progress, but know there's much more to do. We didn't move the needle much at all. We had too many competing priorities and no time to think about it. I do love so much that these polls really do a check-in for each of you or each organization or for all of us anyway. I love that it gives us a second to stop and think about it. A few more seconds. I see the blue lines moving. Yeah, there's much more to do. It looks like is the big winner. Okay, I think everyone's done. A couple people haven't answered, but I'm going to end now and share the results. What do you think, Larry?
All right. Well, we love to see the majority of the people that you made some progress or you significantly took some action. So awesome. Congrats. Mike.
Okay, well, let's talk about what you do with an earned income possibility once you're convinced that it's a good one. So no surprise here, our recommendation is to develop a business plan. And just to ground everybody in our own definition of a business plan, as somebody who we respect in the field once said, planning is bringing the future into the present so that you can do something about it now. If we can talk just a moment about some terminology, some definitions, and understanding the basics. What is a business plan? Very simply, a business plan is a written document that describes in detail how an organization is going to achieve its business goals. And we like to look at it from 4 angles: social return or mission impact, financial return or revenue that you generate, plus marketing and operations. So just very simple and high level, that's how we view a business plan. There's a number of benefits that you as a team and an organization will see by developing a business plan for your earned income venture. First is, it's a first step and an important one to really help you prove the viability of your earned income venture. It'll help you lay out and set direction for the future as it relates to your earned income venture. It'll help you establish some standards for success or some metrics, and it will also help you define how you want to operate that business. So a number of benefits that will accrue from business planning. Now, there's several components in a business plan, and these are, I guess, the ones that are most customary. Now, there's a variety of different templates out there. Some of them will vary, but most typically you'll find in a business plan at the very beginning an executive summary, which you will write at the very end of having developed your plan. You'll have an overview about your organization, your vision and mission, and most importantly, what is it you're selling? Who's your customer? What industry are you in? Who's your competition? How are you going to market and sell it? And of course, what's your financial plan? Your projected revenue, expense, and profit and loss. And typically we will ask you to look at that over a minimum of 3 years and sometimes 5 years. We do have a template for business planning that we really like. We think it's the best thing out there. It is cloud-based and it's called Live Plan. You can actually go to liveplan.com to check it out. It's subscription-based. It's very reasonably priced. I think it's like $11 a month, and it might be even, there might be some savings if you subscribe to it for a full year or even 6 months. It's very user-friendly and it's very intuitive. There's lots of examples in it. It walks you through how to develop a business plan step by step. And it's honestly, you'll find it's actually quite a pleasure to work with because it actually breaks down business planning into manageable steps. So Live Plan, you can check that out. So when we talk about a business plan, we like to make a few distinctions about what it is and then also what it is not. So typically, as you're writing a business plan, it will be mostly externally focused as you're looking to understand all the various components of your business venture. It will be very focused on addressing your product or your service. And it is also a document that you will likely want to share with potential, I guess we'll call them mission impact investors or donors or funders, because when you're creating a business plan, you're likely going to be looking at some startup capital or growth capital needs that you have. So a business plan can help you ultimately raise that startup or growth capital. And we'll talk more about that in a little while. It'll give you a detailed financial forecast for the product or service that you're selling. It will include a competitive and market analysis, and it would also have a more detailed and formal structure and contents. So that's what the business plan is. And we just want to make sure that you distinguish between that and a strategic plan. So a strategic plan, as many of you know, because many of your organizations have developed them, is really an overarching plan that will set strategic direction for your organization. And it's primarily used as an internal planning tool. And it can also provide the basis, though, for more detailed planning, of which one might be a business plan, a marketing strategy or marketing strategies, and also funding strategies. So again, just be sure you understand and can distinguish between the two types of plans. Okay,
Right.
So with that, Larry, I'm going to turn it back to you.
Great. So let's dive in. Let's look at different components of the business plan, because some of this will be homework. Yes, there's always homework, even though this is our last webinar, we always give you homework. So the first thing is what's your vision of your organization? And Mike and I had a chance to go in and look at some of your websites, look at your vision. Some of them are pretty long, some of them are short. Some organizations don't have a vision statement, at least written down. So a vision statement, usually something very, very short that really does define what difference is your organization going to make out there in the long term, as opposed to, or along with, your mission statement. So based on that, what's the purpose of your organization? How are you going to get that vision complete? What activities are you going to do? What's that purpose? And is your earned income offering aligned with that? And again, part of the business plan will include both of these sections. And Mike and I always work with organizations that have alignment with their mission statement and vision statement with their earned income opportunity. So what are you going to sell? How many times over the past 4 months have we asked that, right? What are you going to sell? So articulate your offering. What will your organization offer to its key customers? In the business plan, you'll have to articulate that pretty clearly. It's usually, pretty significant because if you're reading that business plan, you have to really understand, what are we going to offer? How are we going to offer it? And why? So that'll be on your worksheet. So let me give you an example. We worked with the Guide Dog Center north of Sarasota, actually in Bradenton. And they produced a guide dog puppy book with a DVD or a CD that went along with it. They have 500 people out there training their guide dogs at different points in time. They realized that they had a real skill set that they could offer something out there in the community for people to buy. So their example of their offering is, this book will help you learn the proven techniques that our expert trainers have practiced every day for the past 30 years. Purchasing this book is also a caring choice because 100% of the proceeds go directly to the Southeastern Guide Dogs, and it's available in 2 editions, one of which is accompanied by a DVD. So that's what they did. And one of their target markets was seniors who would buy the puppy book for a grandchild, for instance. So that's an example of their offering. So let's go to a poll question. Josephine.
Hi there, here we go. If you were to describe your organization's earned income offering to a potential funder right now, how understandable would it be? Clearly defined and easy to articulate, understandable but takes a little time to explain, a bit confusing, we're still working on it, we plead the fifth, we're not ready to share just yet. You guys are getting quick at answering now. Your fingers are waking up. Had enough coffee. Couple more seconds. The answers are still coming in. Just let me say these are anonymous, so we don't know who's answering. Feel free to be honest. Ready, and here we go. Let me share.
All right. Well,
Right.
we are extremely happy that the majority of you have a clearly defined, or at least it's understandable, and you're still kind of practicing how to say it. Only one person is pleading the fifth. We don't know who that is, but good. This is a really good start. Mike.
Okay, continuing. So we talked about the first few components of the business plan. What's your vision? What's your mission? And what is it you're going to sell? So once you've done that, we want you to think about, well, who's going to buy it? And this quote, "Without customers, you don't have a business, you have a hobby," is very true. So think about it in terms of, do you know who the customers are for your product or service? So let's define what we call target market, or those individuals, businesses, or groups who are going to purchase your product or service. And we'd like you to think about it in terms of primary and secondary target markets. You'll have the opportunity to work on this on your worksheet. So just as an example, one of our clients is a nonprofit that has a thrift store. And what they did when they were thinking about who their customers were was to actually write some very simple customer profiles to describe them. So they had 3 distinct groups of customers. And they really thought about them in terms of, all right, if these were real people, how would we describe them? So the first one is a woman. Her name's Joyce Smith. She's a fashion-conscious stay-at-home mother of 2. Her clothing budget isn't what it was before having kids. So stay-at-home moms is one target market segment. The second one is a woman named Britt Thomas. She's a student who's expected to dress professionally, but with a student's budget. So students is the second segment. And then the third one is a woman named Sylvia Young, and she's a 60-something widow living on a fixed income. She likes to dress up. So age 60 plus women who are on a budget. So this is a good exercise for you and your teams to think about as you're working on this worksheet, to say, all right, if we were going to define who our target market is, who our customers would be, how would we write that profile or description about them? And if you find that you don't know who your customer will be, then it would indicate to you that you've got some homework, some thinking, and some more understanding to do. So very important, key customers and defining them. Next, let's talk about what we call the competition. And in some cases, in the nonprofit sector, we also like to think as competitors, perhaps as even partners. So what do we mean when we talk about competition? So you can think about other organizations. They can be nonprofits, they can be for-profits, they could be government agencies, or they could be other entities who are actually selling some kind of similar or competitive offering. What you want to do here is to sort of define categories of competitors, but also to get specific and to say, all right, so here in Sarasota or in Bradenton or in another county in the region, who would be some specific organizations that are in our space who are perhaps competing with us, and to actually name them. So a very good exercise to go through. That's important because when you think about your competitors and you actually define them, you're actually going to want to understand, what does each of them do and do well, and perhaps what aren't they doing well? And we talk about unique value in an earned income venture, and this quote from Steve Martin is a good one. Be so good they can't ignore you. Understand what unique value your product or service has relative to your competitors or other organizations in the marketplace who are selling products or services. So there's something that will help you define your own value relative to the competition, and we call that a value proposition. Some of you may have heard of this before, some of you may have not, but you're going to have an opportunity to think about your own value proposition. So what is a value proposition? It's just a statement that asks you to articulate what benefits your earned income venture will offer to customers and prospects relative to the competition. So we have a value proposition generator, much like a Mad Lib, if you've ever done one of those before, where you plug in a few different words to this statement, and it helps you create your own value proposition. So again, this is going to be on the worksheet that you have following today's Labinar, and you'll have an opportunity to do this. So you would put your organization in the first blank, and then to continue that, it would say your organization provides X product or service. And then you have the opportunity to say what's unique about that and who it's targeted to, which ultimately creates some sort of mission impact or social value, unlike that you could get from your competitors. So just to give you an example of one value proposition, this is an organization that we work with in California. It's called the Coalition for Compassionate Care of California, or CCCC, and this was their value proposition. CCCC creates and sells a variety of educational materials to support healthcare providers in important discussions with patients about serious illness. Designed in a neutral, easy to understand format that's available in 3 languages, these tools enable healthcare providers to facilitate person-centered care in a cost-effective manner, unlike that of other products currently available. So what you want to get to when you're working on your value proposition is a statement that helps you to clearly understand what are you offering of unique value relative to your competitors. And you'll find that it's a very, very helpful exercise. Okay, so that's a value proposition. Larry, I'm going to turn it back to you.
So let's dive into, is there a need for this product or this service? And there's a number of different questions that we ask you as we help you put the business plan together, but you need to understand the market really clearly. And is there a need out there? You know, what problem does your product or service offering solve for your customers? Are you getting phone calls? Are you getting emails? Do you know that people need this product or service? We don't want you to develop something that no one needs and no one will buy. That will be on your worksheet. What trends? So what's happening out there in the market that could predict where it's going before? You know, think about any trends in your type of business. Are people using technology more? Is the age group moving or trending differently? Do they have more money? Is there more money coming down from a federal or a state level? Is that a trend? So think about the trends within your business opportunity. And then growth. Is the market growing or shrinking or staying flat? So do you see more people or more organizations buying this in the future for some reason or not? If it's going down, if you see it's going to shrink, maybe it's not the best opportunity right now to move forward with. So it's a really good section to work through, and you probably haven't thought quite this way about a product or a service before. So let me give you an example. This is a group that we worked with in Sarasota. So they're focusing on the need. There's an untapped need among families with children to seek and visit local attractions during the summer. I mean, we know how hot it is in Sarasota during the summer, but they want safe environments, daytime activities, variety of experiences at different development levels, opportunities for children and adults, edutainment, opportunity for families to get back, and people want to join, be a part of the membership group. So this group was thinking about that their target markets have all these needs out there. Just in the chat box, if you can, which organization do you think this might be? A group that does something outdoors, wants to bring more families in. They were looking at this need. Can anyone guess the organization? Maybe? Jennifer, you are the winner. Actually, you got it right. It was Selby Gardens that we worked with. Selby Gardens put together a daytime and evening activity that drew a lot of families in. They met that need, and then they increased their membership base, and they created a revenue model around it. So Jennifer, you are on. Let's look at business plan objectives. So business plan objectives are always measurable, and they help guide the business plan. And once a business plan is done, we'll go back and say, are we meeting our objectives or our goals as we move forward? So let me give you some examples. Well, first of all, kind of what's the desired business objectives? And we like to think about it in 4 ways, sometimes 5 ways. But you have a mission objective, you have a margin objective, or meaning, you know, you're going to raise some capital or some dollars through the sale of this. There's operational objectives, and usually marketing sales objectives. Sometimes there's a 5th category, depending on the organization. It might be an environmental objective or another type. Let me give you an example here. So a mission objective, and this is an organization that we worked with in the Tampa area around vision. So their mission objective, they wanted to contribute to the health needs of minimum of 5,000 people by the end of 2022 through the sale of their relevant and useful vision products. So very measurable, 5,000 people, and they gave a date. Margin, they wanted to generate a minimum of $30,000 net revenue by the end of 2022, very measurable. Operations, they had to define an infrastructure to support that operational need, and they were going to put that together, including pop-up shops, by September of 2022. And then marketing, they were adding to the marketing, communications, and sales resources needed to launch the retail venture by November. So they had some things in place, but they knew they had to build each one of those key areas out within their marketing to grow it. And this group actually created a partnership, and they put kiosks up in their partnership offices, and they were able to sell and meet their sales goals by the end of 2022.
Larry, if I can interject for 1 second.
Sure.
One of the things to keep in mind is while you'll develop objectives and metrics in your business plan, they are living and breathing, and they end up having to sometimes be adjusted depending on things that happen in the marketplace. So a number of organizations that we worked with leading up to 2020 and the pandemic had very well articulated business plan objectives. And of course, a number of their businesses changed radically overnight and throughout 2020 and even into 2021. So I think one of the things just to keep in mind is that business plan objectives oftentimes can change depending on market conditions and the situation. So again, just something to keep in mind that once you've committed them to paper doesn't necessarily mean that they're going to stay exactly as you conceive them.
I'm going to share one more thing. Usually when we're doing business planning, we come up with these objectives somewhat early in the process, and we always go back and edit them and change them, because once you get the budget done, your margin is much clearer. Once you get the budget done, you can realize how many people or organizations you'll meet through your mission objectives. And sometimes once you get that budget done, you realize you need some additional operations inside the organization that you didn't quite have before. So we always go back and edit them probably just before the executive summary is done. Let's jump to a poll question, Josephine.
Hi, here we go. To what degree does your organization set objectives to achieve measurable goals? For all program activities, we hold ourselves accountable. For some program activities, we hold ourselves accountable. We develop objectives, but rarely hold ourselves accountable. Or, what is an objective again? You guys are quick at clicking. Thank you. I think we're almost done. I'm gonna give it one more second, see who else has an answer, but more is coming. And here we go. It's almost tied. Look at that.
All right. Good numbers, right? The majority of you have program objectives and you hold yourself accountable, at least accountable to some of your programs for some of you, and some of you don't really do, well, a couple of you have a hard time with objectives. It's really important. And Mike and I find that a lot of times nonprofits, it's that accountability piece that's the hard one to put in motion. That if you didn't meet your goal, if you didn't meet that objectives, it's hard to take a step back and make those changes. So good, thank you for sharing that.
So we want to just pause for a moment before we continue and ask if anybody has any questions, or I'll ask Josephine if there's any questions in the chat box or comments. It's, again, we're throwing a lot of things at you, and we just want to make sure that if you have questions, you have an opportunity to ask them and to share. So anybody have anything?
I see one. Oh, go ahead, Josephine, sorry.
Oh, no, I was gonna say there's no questions, but go ahead, Larry.
I was just gonna say Jonathan's mother-in-law works for guide dogs. So these are guide dogs. So we'll have to talk about that later, Jonathan.
Yeah,
All right, no questions?
nope.
Okay, then we'll continue. So let's talk about marketing, an important part of a business plan. And as you can see here, marketing is a contest for people's attention. We live in a world today where we're constantly being bombarded with messages, and there's a lot of clutter out there asking for your attention. So when you think about your organization's own earned income venture, marketing is important because it will help you build visibility and awareness, and also help you communicate the value of your product or service to your client prospects or your customer prospects. And importantly, it's geared specifically to helping to sell that product or service. Many of your organizations have marketing activities that you use for a variety of different things. It could be for fundraising or fund development. It could be for a number of your programs or even your products or services that you currently have. We want you to at least think about your own earned income venture, whether you have an existing one that's up and running or you're thinking about launching a new one, in terms of a brand. So remember that people naturally gravitate towards those things that are branded because it helps them to identify with them, to understand what they are, and to see themselves in whatever that brand is for your product or service. So just some examples here, which you may have seen in our own community here. These are organizations that we've worked with as part of Margin and Mission Ignition. And as part of the initiatives that we went through with them, they developed these unique brand icons and oftentimes brand names, as well as taglines. So Peepers for your low vision needs, supporting the mission of Lighthouse of Minnesota. Peepers is the store that is at the Lighthouse, both brick and mortar and an online store. This frog has become a bit of a local icon, and the organization has used the Peepers frog in a number of different ways. Prospect Riding Center. So they are an organization that offers both therapeutic and recreational riding centers. And this logo they created as part of this initiative to really help distinguish the organization and make it stand out. So Habitat Clean Out and Removal is part of the Charlotte County Habitat for Humanity Earned Income Ventures. Again, we helped them work on this venture, and they wanted to find just a clean and simple way to identify the brand and to bring it to life through a logo. So they landed on this icon. And then the Folk School at Florida Maritime Museum is a pretty unique venture that offers crafts, culture, and community to folks in Cortez. And they found a very nice way to sort of visualize this brand as one that is both sort of folksy and has connections to the past, but it unites it with the current day. So again, thinking about your own earned income venture, how might you brand it, create a logo, a tagline, and a look and feel for it? Some other important components for the business plan in terms of how you'll market your earned income venture, your website is absolutely critical. So we urge organizations as they're going through this business planning process to think about how you might create a dedicated website for your earned income venture, and one that really clearly helps people understand what it is you have to sell. So the Literacy Council of Sarasota offers English as a second language trainings to businesses, corporations, and other organizations throughout the region. And this website was created specifically to entice organizations to learn more about those trainings, those classes, and to do it in a way that was very both simple, but also compelling. So again, thinking about your own organization's earned income venture, if you were going to create a dedicated website for it, what would it look like?
Mike, can I add one thing here?
Yeah.
So on this, they actually had a slider. So the first one was Hey Businesses, and you could learn more, very specific about business opportunity. The next one was Hey Schools, and then there was Hey Nonprofits. So very specific programs, very targeted market that they were going after. They had a slider for each.
Yeah, and I think, again, that it always is interesting to think about if you were going to create a website for a business or for your earned income venture, what would be the best way to do that? So don't assume that you have to keep the existing website that you have. You might have to invest some dollars to create one that's going to really help to market and sell your earned income venture. So we always urge you to look at what else is out there, see how other organizations are marketing and selling their products and services, and what kind of websites have they created to do that. It's a good exercise. Just continuing to share just some sort of tactics that you can use for marketing. Make sure that if you're not already using your email signatures for staff and others in your organization to help promote or sell your earned income venture, that you think about how you might do that. You know, that real estate on emails is important, it's free, and you have flexibility to change the messaging, you know, whenever, however you want. So Peace River Wildlife Center both developed a new logo for their center, but as part of their earned income venture, they started to tease it in the messaging on their email signature. So you can see that little banner at the bottom that says, don't miss the launch of our exciting new e-store coming on May 1st. And again, just another example of how you might communicate about your earned income venture. Of course, social media is always a great way for you to promote your earned income venture. Two examples here. specifically dedicated to products or services. One on the left being sold by the Pines of Sarasota Education and Training Institute. So they happened here to promote their, they had a series of videos focused on dementia training for caregivers, and they had a Memorial Day sale, saved $20 on our best-selling bundle, limited time offer. On the right side, Charlotte County Habitat for Humanity promoted one of their resale stores, in particular offering 20% off all merchandise at a particular store. So again, social media, it's free. Depending on your following, you can potentially get a lot of folks to see it, a lot of eyeballs, and hopefully create some visibility and awareness for your earned income venture. If you're not good at social media, and we frequently hear that, like, you know, we don't have the expertise on hand, and it's hard for us to post on social media with any frequency. The good news is that there are people out there who are good at it. You can hire them on a contract basis, and oftentimes you can actually find interns from local colleges, universities, folks who are pretty good at social media, who may even be able to help you with it for your earned income venture. So another thing to think about. We're also big believers in the power of public relations and publicity. So anytime you have the opportunity to share news about your earned income venture, it's a good idea. So you may be able to write a press release, or have somebody who works with your organization write a press release about the launch of your earned income venture, or something unique about it, or some impact that you're making with it in the community. Whatever the story might be, being able to articulate it and then to share it is important. It might be on PR Web, which is an online news distribution service. You can pay as you go to submit a release online so that it gets blasted out to reporters, editors, and other folks who are in the news. And you can also use your press releases to stimulate some local interest by the media, whether it's print media, broadcast media, or others. So again, the good news here is, if your organization hasn't done this before, or if you're not good at it, you don't have the skill set to do so, you can hire folks to help you do this. And you can do it on a consulting type basis. But if you're the best kept secret and folks don't know about your earned income venture, it's likely that they're not going to buy. So the more that you're sharing about it, the better.
Mike, can I share one story?
Yeah.
There was a project that we worked in Alabama, a small nonprofit, and they did a press release based on the work that we were doing. And the Los Angeles Times picked up on the press release. They sent a reporter to Alabama to interview the team. They actually got a big article in the LA Times, and then they received a lot of donations after that, and they got a lot of press as they launched their business. So you never know who will pick up the press release and run with it.
Yeah, that's a good point, Larry. And I think one other thing too that you'll find is a real benefit from writing press releases, from putting them on PR Web, on your social media, on your website, is it will really help your your organization, your earned income venture be seen on Google page 1. So if somebody's searching via keywords for a business, a product, a service that fits your category, oftentimes the more prolific you are by sharing it in electronic media, the more likely it is to come up on that Google page 1. And that's important if somebody's searching for something that you have to sell. So a good thing to just a good practice to have and to get into. So a question that we like to ask as part of the marketing work that we do in a business plan is not only what are the tactics, but really thinking about the messaging. What are you going to say? So what's your message? And then, of course, once you've done that, how are you going to deliver it? And the what are you going to say is very important. So identifying a variety of different key messages about your product or service takes time. It takes thought, and it requires you as a team, whether you're doing it or you're hiring somebody to help you, to think through that messaging. And then, of course, once you understand what that messaging is, you can promote it in a variety of different places like we just shared. So a website, advertising, collateral materials, press releases I just shared with you, and social media. E-blasts are a great way to promote and market your products and services because, again, it doesn't cost you anything to do that. Newsletters, key partners. So if you have partners in the community who are communicating with their constituents, you might be able to piggyback on their communication and become a part of what they're sharing. So that can be a good thing. Word of mouth is also, one of the ways to just really get the word out and get people interested. And then if there are conferences and events that you can be at where you can build some visibility and awareness for your product or service, that too can be very, very helpful. So these are all ways you can think about marketing.
I think one more thing is, as you think about delivering your message, how do you make it so it's understandable and jargon free? How do you make it so people can understand it? You don't know how many times Mike and I have sat down with organizations and said, give us your elevator speech. And seriously, didn't understand a word they said because it was full of acronyms and it was full of words that are very specific to just them and their organization. So think about jargon free so the majority of people can understand what you're saying.
That's it. We all have our own nonprofit speak, so putting it in layperson language is good. Okay, Josephine, let's introduce the next poll question.
Here we go. Save the best for last, guys. If your organization's marketing approach were an animal, which one would it be? Cheetah, we're fast and responsive to reach our clients and customers. Camel, we get the job done, we're slow and steady. Kangaroo, our marketing hops around and sometimes shows a return. Monkey, we're easily distracted, so don't get much done. This is a good one. Everybody's responding. Again, I really do love the fact that these polls give everyone a chance to stop and really think about their own situation. This will be good to see who wins. Okay, one more second, and then I'll end the poll and share. Looks like everyone's done. Here we go. Cheetah's the winner. Fast and responsive. What do you think, Mike?
Well, yeah, lots of cheetahs here. That's a good thing. Fair number of camels and kangaroos. And I think, the cheetahs, the camels, and the kangaroos, we're happy to hear that you're doing some marketing. It may not always be the best, the most effective, and the most efficient, but if you are out there drumming up visibility and awareness, that's a good thing. To the few monkeys that we have out there, I guess the good news is you have the opportunity to become less distracted and try to focus more so you do get more done. Remember, when you have an earned income venture, don't be the best kept secret out there. You want people to know what you have to sell because ultimately that's going to draw them to your business venture and hopefully generate some revenue and mission impact. Okay, let's keep going. So we talked about marketing, and what we want you to think about, because in a business plan, you do have to distinguish between marketing and sales. And there is a difference. Oftentimes, though, when we're working with folks, they tend to sort of lump marketing and sales into one category, and it's not the case. So let me just explain briefly a little bit about how we encourage you to think about and look at a sales plan. So whereas marketing is about building visibility and awareness for your earned income venture, your sales plan is really the process that you go through to make the cash register ring, to close the deals that your marketing plan opens. And you want to be really intentional about it. Like, sales don't just happen. You have to actually think about it. And until you do, you probably won't have an effective sales plan. So a sales plan will look at, consider, and help explain several things, but a few things in particular. The steps that you will follow to close a sale, to really think about who in your organization will sell the product or service that you have. Also, when you have sales, how are you going to process and track the order once it's received? So again, it can, depending on your business venture, it might be more complex or it might be more simple. And then also, how are you going to keep in contact with your customers or clients? So you can see that visual on the left, which is really what we call a sales funnel. And so taking your prospects through a sales funnel will ultimately help you go from sort of generating the lead to qualifying the lead to ultimately, getting them to become a paying customer for your product or service. Questions we like to ask as well is, do you have a CRM? So CRM might be familiar to some of you, it might not be. If you're not familiar with it, a CRM is a customer relationship management platform. So it can really help you think about and organize who your sales prospects are and how you're going to move them through that sales funnel. So remember, it's not always an easy sale. Depending on the product or service that you're going to sell, it actually may be a longer process and one that just takes more time. When it comes to CRMs, there's a number of different platforms out there. We like one called Simple Sales Tracking because it's simple. There are other CRMs out there that they can be more complex. But again, depending on your organization and your needs, Salesforce is a CRM that also has a number of different components to it. Zoho is another CRM that you can purchase online. But the idea is, what do you need to build into your business plan to really help you be better at sales? So,
Mike, can I add one thing?
Sure.
Mike just highlighted the three different sales platforms. Think about it that it's one place where all the knowledge is kept. So the names of those that you're going after a sale with, the emails can be stored there, the proposals are stored there, everything is in one place. So if that staff member transitions out or that volunteer transitions out, everything is in one place and somebody else can pick up. So it really does keep the knowledge together for your sales team or your sales process.
So just an example, and this is a simple one, but going back to Peepers at the Lighthouse, one of the things that they identified in their business plan early on was the need to hire somebody who could really help them with business development and sales, because they knew that a big part of the revenue generation for Peepers was going to be doing sales with ophthalmologists, eye clinics, and other healthcare professionals who could potentially help to build their business. So they didn't have that expertise in-house, and they took the steps as part of their business plan to say, we're going to hire somebody, a professional who has that experience and can go out and help us evolve and grow this business. So don't always assume that you have to take on the sales part of an initiative, an earned income initiative, by doing it with your existing staff or talent. Sometimes you have to expand and go above and beyond. Okay, so that's sales plan. Larry, I'm going to let you jump in and talk about financials.
Now, here's the most exciting part of the whole presentation, right? The financial statements. I'm kidding. But in a business plan, critically important. Mike, do you want to? Within the financials, as you develop a business plan, we develop 3 years of financials. So what are all the revenue that we're forecasting over the 3-year period of time? And hopefully it shows a growth in revenue. The personnel that will be involved with it, everything from part-time to full-time to even consultants that you might hire. What's your budget all the way through that? And then at the end, what's your profit and loss statement? And we hopefully there's a profit. Sometimes in some businesses, the profit margin is very small, even at year 3. So we look at maybe a year 4 or year 5 business plan. In the food industry, the margins are very small. That's just an example. But again, it's a 3-year financial plan that we help put together. And why? What's the purpose of it? And all of you have done grants before. You have budgets in your organizations, and you understand this. But for us, it's to really project the revenue and the expenses and the profitability that will benefit your organization. We want you to show that there's some net revenue at the end of that, so then you can make some decisions. How are we going to use this net revenue that has no strings attached to it? It will help inform your decision-making as you move forward and your organization grows. I mean, we find that at the end of the first year, there's usually tweaks that happen to the financials because you learn something along the way that will change or up year 2 or year 3 of your financial plan. And you'll need to seek some startup capital to grow your business or to get it off the ground. So give you some examples around that. If you're starting maybe don't move quite yet. If you're starting a new business, you need some startup capital. So you might have to update that website. You might need to hire a part-time or a full-time person. You might need to produce some marketing materials. So you might need $20,000, $30,000, $40,000. That's a startup capital. If you need growth capital, you already have the business in place, but you're going to take it to a whole different level. So how many dollars do you need to actually grow it, to take it to that next level, to add that additional staff, or to reach that other market that you've wanted to reach for a long time? So there's always startup capital. And during the business planning process, we figure out what's your startup capital. And then there's a fast pitch that you hopefully raise most or at least some of that startup capital prior to implementation. So let's look at this is a very simple consulting business that we helped. So there's 3 years of financials, and you can see that there's no red on there. So we're happy about that. There was no net loss. They actually showed a pretty good profit margin by year 3. The way that they looked at their revenue was by selling hours of consulting time. And again, this is a consulting business, very small consulting business. So they were selling hours. And you can see the first year, 40,000 in hours, 80,000 and 120,000. And you can see they needed $11,000 in startup funding to get this off the ground. They needed to develop a website, and there was some training materials that they needed for their consultants. So the first year budget was $51,000 in revenue. Looking at the personnel table, they used a blended rate. So they looked at their couple of staff that they had, and they were kind of all at different cost levels, along with a couple of consultants out there. And what's a good number that we can use that will cover the staff time or the consulting time, provide some overhead rate to us, and have a net margin on top of that. So they came up with a blended rate, which then they sold in the hourlies that you saw in the revenue side. They were also needed to hire a statistician to pull some documents together on a regular basis. So you can see their personnel table.
Larry, do you want to just take a moment and explain what we mean by a blended rate? Because it's not a term that's always familiar to organizations.
Yeah. So as I said just a minute ago, they had different salary levels, they had different numbers. So they looked at 4 or 5 different people, and instead of saying how many, this individual is going to be working on that project, they said, if we take a look at the percentage of time we're going to allocate for these folks in this business, what's kind of a midpoint, or maybe a little bit above midpoint rate that we can use that would cover our costs? Again, depending on the percentage of time that the individuals are spending in the business. So they came up with a rate. So by the end of the quarter or the end of the 6 months, they were covering all the staff time that were involved with that business in one rate, as opposed to 5 different salary levels. So again, they use a blended rate. Sometimes you use individual rates. It just depends on the business. So very simple operating expenses. They had salaries. You can see there was no employee-related expenses. Again, this is a very small organization, and they had no benefits, which is a little sad. They've actually changed it up now. But they had some marketing and promotions, printing, travel, technology, and then they put an overhead rate in. So you can see that first year, they looked at some technology that they had to buy. And there was some printing and promotional materials that they needed. So those were some of the startup capital needs that went in. And I think they covered some of their overhead rate in that startup. But 3 years of financials. Again, very simple budget. This is probably the simplest one that we've seen. As you look at a profit and loss statement, so LivePlan will show you that profit and loss statement. And they have, as you can see, they have some, there's profit at the end of each year, $14,000, $49,000, and $79,000 they have. So, that's, for a very small consultancy, it's pretty good. So financials, for most of you, especially if it's a brand new business, it's really too early to think about what might that bottom line be at the end of each year as far as a dollar amount. And that really kind of does evolve as the business plan is coming together. But it's not too early to start thinking about what that plan looks like, how your startup capital will be obtained, and who you might get that from, and is your financial and accounting system set up for earned income? So do you currently track your revenue expenses by program? Hopefully most of your organizations do that. Some nonprofits don't. If you start to work with us, you'll need to track your revenue expense by this business specifically, because we need to know if we're making a profit or not. Do you include staff hours? So some nonprofits include staff hours, the majority, some don't. So you'll need to include that staff hours, and we'll need to track the amount of time that people are spending in this business, again, because we want to cover all of our expenses along the way. And what's your overhead rate? Do you have an overhead rate? Because we'll need to wrap that into the business too, because we want to cover some of your agency that you have to fundraise for now. So part of the worksheet will be just answering these questions in very general terms. So, one thing you can do after the call is check on what your overhead rate is. You might know it off the top of your head. You might have to ask whoever did your financial statements last year. And lots of content that we've just shared with you. You probably feel a little bit like this dog right now, like, wow, that's a lot that we've been dumped on. But maybe we can open it up for just a minute or so if you have any questions. Anybody have any specific questions about the financials?
There is a
Lisa.
question. There is a question in the chat from Lisa. Is there a formula to utilize to address how much profit should go toward the nonprofit's operational revenue? And how much profit should be kept to operate and grow the new business venture?
It's really just depends, Lisa, on the business. Hopefully some of the dollars can roll back into the business and help grow it over the 3-year period of time or beyond. And we want some extra dollars to be set aside that you can apply to maybe another part of your organization to cover some expenses that you have to fundraise for now. So, it really just depends. We see organizations, have a different formula depending on what their business is. Mike, do you have a different answer than that?
No, that's exactly what I was going to say as well. I think one thing to keep in mind, though, and you'll hear this over and over again from Larry and I, is that when you're, as you're going through the business planning process and you're looking at the pricing for your product or service, don't sell your product or service short. And also just make sure that you're building in a healthy enough margin for you to actually see a meaningful return on it. So our typical rule of thumb is, we'd like to see a 30% margin on, your products or services that you're selling. If you're at 10%, 15%, or even 20%, we believe that you might be too low. So something just to keep in mind as you're going through the pricing part of the business plan.
I'm working with an organization in Connecticut right now on a consultancy, and they're doing individual consulting and they're doing training, and they have different pricing structure for both of those parts of the business. And their training business actually has a higher profit margin of about 60% compared to their consulting business, which is around 40%. So again, even with the same business, you can have a bit of a different profit margin depending on what you're delivering.
I know even with some of the teams that we've been working with as part of our MMI mini Zoom consulting sessions, there has been a tendency by some of you to really underprice your offering. And while I get, we understand that, sometimes you just feel like we can't sell it for more. The reality is, if you've got something of value that others want, just don't underestimate what it's worth to them.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, any other questions, Josephine? Anybody type anything else in the chat box? Or I guess before we move on, if anybody wants to raise their hand and share, please feel free.
Good question, Lisa.
Hey,
There's no questions in the chat box, but I don't think anyone's raising their
I think
hand.
somebody
Michael,
Oh, Karen
Yeah.
is. I see Karen. Go
And
ahead.
Greg, you also have a question.
If we do not, in figuring the profit margin, if we do not pay employees, then how does that impact all of the steps?
It's just, again, just depends on how the business plan looks. If we
Figuring the
don't,
overhead,
Right.
yeah.
then you might have a higher profit margin, Karen, if everyone is a volunteer. And, it just depends on what the expense side looks like, right? So again, every business plan is just a little bit different depending on how you staff it, how you expense it, what your marketing and sales look like. Maybe you have to rent a space to do your event. Maybe that's your biggest cost. So what if you didn't have to rent a space, but you could hire a couple of employees? Again, it's just, that's a discussion that we'll have.
Okay.
Greg, you had a question?
well, it wasn't a question, but I thought the group would benefit on this. When I first came down to Florida in 2004, I trained teenagers at a program I had developed, and having a passion for it, I went around to all the schools offering to do it for free, and no schools would have me in. So I took advantage of a seminar, and they talked about pricing. So I changed my strategy and started charging $1,000 an hour.
An hour?
And I got, well, it was an hour and a half program.
Wow. Okay.
And I got hired all over the place in Sarasota and Manatee from the schools by charging something I was willing to give away free, but they put no value on the free training,
Right.
but value because I had a hefty price.
Right. Yeah, that's good. have to talk to you about how you charge $1,000 for an hour, but that's, if you could do that, Greg, all the better, right?
But
Good.
again, I mean, I think it's a really good point, Greg, and it is something that we encourage everybody to think about, which is there's more inherent value and people just want more what you have to offer if there's a price associated with it. And it also, you know, when you look at certain types of products and services, people do perceive they're getting more when they have to pay more for it. So it is an interesting kind of just, you know, consumer dynamic that goes on. Another thing that we always urge you to think about too, when you're pricing your products, is there's this whole notion of moving from free to fee. So, you know, when a lot of times nonprofits are giving away things for free, and as we're encouraging them to think about selling them, you know, there's a hang up about, well, how are we going to move people from free to fee? Because they're already conditioned to getting it for free. So that sometimes can be a bit of a, you know, a tough challenge, but we urge you at some point along the way, sooner rather than later, to start moving from free to fee and figuring out how you're going to do that. You might have to do it in phases or stages. You might give it away for free within your own local, you know, kind of mission-centric area, and then, you know, expand outside of that area and sell it for a fee. But again, there's different ways you can think about it.
Or you might look at a totally different target market to sell it to.
Right.
So, yeah.
Right.
All right.
All right, let's keep moving. So well, Larry, are you going to do this?
I think I am.
Okay, go ahead.
So now you know the basics of business planning, the very basics of business planning. Again, we just spent an hour and 10 minutes kind of talking about it. So the journey that you've been on with us. So thank you again for all of your participation. Some groups dropped off along the way, as you could see with our numbers, because they realized that they just weren't ready for this. But you spent 4 Labinars with us over a 4-month period of time. You talked to us a couple times during that, had good conversations, and we got to know you. So appreciate you hanging out there with us and hopefully learning something along the way. Keep up the momentum. So if you choose to move forward with us or not, keep meeting as a team. Think about business planning. Take a look at Live Plan. Share the learning and the outcomes with your staff or your board or your key stakeholders, your volunteers. Kind of what are the 5 or 6 big things that you got out of our Labinar series, and what can you share? Maybe you can make some little steps, little changes within your agencies now. What might those be? So, and we really, truly encourage you, and all of you have a business plan idea, to develop a business plan for earned income. You're all interested in it, or you wouldn't have hung out here for 4 months with us. So very much appreciate that. So Mike, I will turn it over to you.
All right. Well, in terms of what's next, as we mentioned earlier at the start of this session, and we've been telling you all along the way, that we do have this something more from the Patterson Foundation. And we have a process to advance to the next phase of margin and mission ignition, if you as an organization are ready to do so. And just a little bit about what that looks like. So ultimately, it's an intensive 30-month engagement, and you would receive consultation, technical assistance to help you develop a business plan, implement it and bring it to life, and help track and monitor progress over time. And essentially, the business planning phase of work would span about 3.5 or 4 months. We'd work with you weekly via Zoom. And at the end of those 4 weeks, or 4 months rather, you'll have a business plan. And then from there, we would move to the next phase, which is helping you to implement that business plan and bring it to life. And included within that process would be what we call a fast pitch, which Larry mentioned earlier. Think of it kind of as a shark tank to help you raise your startup or growth capital so that you have some resources to actually implement the business plan. And then from there, we would stay with you for an extended period of time to help you track and monitor your progress over time. But we would actually work with you rather than weekly. We would go to once per month for an hour during that phase of work. So if this sounds like it's of interest to you, here's a bit of a timeline that we have to go through what we're calling an application or an advancement process. So tomorrow, each of your teams will get an advancement packet that would be emailed to the executive directors or the CEOs. And you'll also get, all of you, a feedback survey or a link to a feedback survey, just like we've done for each of the prior 3 Labinars. On Tuesday, February 22nd, those advancement packets will be due back to us as well as the feedback survey. We want you to send them to Josephine, and it would be by noon Eastern on Tuesday, February 22nd. If we have questions about your advancement packet or there's anything that's not clear to us, we would ask you to do just a short call with us. And that's just, again, only if it's needed. And then on February 28th, Monday, we will notify the teams as to whether or not you are going to advance to this intensive phase of the initiative. And for those organizations that do advance, we would set up kind of the business planning kickoff sessions via Zoom the week of March 21st. So again, just some timing to think about here in terms of you and your teams if you are interested in advancing. This advancement packet, it does address a series of questions. They are specific to your organization's earned income offering. It is specific to your organization's preparedness for earned income. So we talk about LWRCC, and are you poised and ready as an organization to take this on? Because this initiative, it is quite intensive and it requires more time and resources by you and your team than, for example, what we've asked of you during the past 4 months for this Labinar series. We'll also ask you to submit a couple of other things. So one would be agreement from your board. So does your board agree that and sign off on participating in this margin and mission ignition initiative? And we'll also ask you to submit the completed Labinar number 4 worksheet that you're going to get tomorrow from Josephine. So again, a few things that will be included as part of this. We want you to put some time and attention and some good thinking into the advancement packet, obviously, to reflect your thoughts about this. So Tuesday, February 22nd at noon is that deadline for submission. So let us pause for a minute. Again, over the course of the past 4 months, we've talked a lot with you about a variety of different topics related to earned income, what's involved as you're looking at kind of conceptualizing, perhaps, developing a business plan and bringing an earned income venture to life, all those readiness considerations that go around LWRCC, and then also what it takes to succeed at earned income. So we really urge you to not necessarily just jump ahead for the sake of jumping ahead and saying we're ready, but to really think about it. So consider, does your organization have what it takes, to move forward today, in the future? Are you unsure? And something that really does require you to think about this and ponder and be candid with yourselves. And, if you decide, for example, that your organization is not ready to move forward for whatever reason, that's okay. So, again, think about that. What I'd like to do is to introduce Michael Corley from the Patterson Foundation. just to share an announcement with all of you. And I'm going to take us off of screen share and let Michael say hello and talk for a few minutes.
Mike, I appreciate a lot, and both to you and Larry, thank you. Every time I go through this, I learn a little something different, and so thank you for your commitment to this margin mission ignition. So to the group, Mike just talked a little bit about the demands in time and the whole LWRCC related to embarking on this journey. And his last two slides talked about if you're not ready, it's okay. And so what the Patterson Foundation wants to make sure that you understand, it is okay. If you have participated and met all the eligibility requirements up to now, and you've decided that the timing is not right, please do not feel obligated to go forward. The Patterson Foundation will not frown upon that. And in fact, if you make that decision, they say, you know what, the timing's not right, we will give you an honorarium of $2,500 to say, thank you for being candid. Thank you for your time up to this point, because we know this does take time. And also to let you know that we're sincere about it. It's got to be the right fit. We learned this about 5-6 years ago when we did this the first time, that a lot of folks were like, oh gosh, we hope we don't want to disappoint the Patterson Foundation. And the last thing we want is you to jeopardize your organization because you've been through the process to this point. We will very likely do this again. So as you're considering whether or not you want to move forward, please recognize that that honorarium will be made available to you if you decide not to continue. And really appreciate you committing your time up to this point.
Michael, thank you. And again, I think as we're getting ready to wrap our session today, and just to recap what Michael shared, you may opt out, and if you decide to do that, you'll receive a $2,500 honorarium. The process to do that is tomorrow when the other emails are sent out. An opt-out form will be emailed to the executive directors and CEOs with their advancement packet. Again, as Michael said, your organization, if you do decide to choose the opt-out, need to have met the minimum requirements that we had laid out for this phase of the initiative. By Tuesday, February 22nd, if you choose to opt out, you need to submit that form to Josephine by noon Eastern, and then sometime in March, those opt-out checks would be mailed to your organization. So if you have questions about any of this, please reach out to us or to Josephine, and we will certainly get back to you. So
Mike, I have one clarification. If you can go back to the previous slide.
Sure.
If you choose to move forward and fill out the advancement packet and aren't selected to be a part of the process, you'll still get the $2,500. So if you have met the criteria. So just an FYI.
Okay, good. Thanks for clarifying, Larry. So we are at that magical moment right now where we're ready to wrap. So again, thanks to all of you for being with us today to focus on earned income business planning. We hope this was a helpful session for you. We are so appreciative for all of you being here. Pamela, did you just raise your hand? Go ahead.
So Rocket Phonics is working with students Monday through Friday right now, every morning. So will there be other options than the 10 a.m. time slot? Because it makes it difficult for us to be, doing this and working with the students.
So what is 10 a.m., Pamela?
Our meetings, these Labinars have been starting at 10 a.m. If we move forward, then will there be time alternatives, or will it always be 10 a.m.?
If you move forward and you're selected, we'll work with you on whatever time works for you and for us. It doesn't have to be 10 a.m.
Yeah, our format will completely change. We'll move out of Labinars, and if your organization participates, we'll be, working one-on-one with your teams. So stay tuned on that. Anyway, congratulations to all of you. We are so appreciative for your time, for all that you have put into this initiative. You've all stuck with us through, through all of it. And for that, we are grateful. We are so appreciative that we've gotten to know each of you and your teams. And we do look forward to the prospect of continuing either to work with you or stay in touch with you. And as Michael Corley said, if the time isn't right for your organization to participate in the intensive part of the initiative, hopefully at some point, maybe later in the future. So again, thanks to everybody. That wraps our session for today. We say thank you. And again, don't hesitate to reach out to us with any questions you might have as it pertains to any of the follow-up items from today. All right. Thanks,
Bye,
everybody.
everybody.
Thank you.
Bye.